Blood and Ruin, an apocalypse romance. Prologue. 3 years before the fall. The laboratory hummed with fluorescent light as Dr. Marcus Holloway reviewed the latest blood samples. His daughter Ivy sat cross-legged on the examination table behind him, swinging her legs. "Daddy, why do I have to get poked again?" "Because you're special, little one." He didn't turn around. The anomalies in her blood had grown more pronounced over the past month, regenerative markers that shouldn't exist in human DNA. Your blood might help a lot of people someday. Through the glass partition, his research partner, Benjamin Reed, watched them with an expression Marcus chose not to examine too closely. The modified retrovirus in Reed's private laboratory, the one Marcus had just discovered, the one Reed called Project Lazarus, was scheduled for human trials next week. Unauthorized trials. On prisoners who hadn't consented. Marcus had already drafted the report to the ethics board. By tomorrow, Reed's career would be over. He had no way of knowing that Reed had already read that draft, or that in 48 hours, both he and his daughter would become Reed's final test subjects and the virus would escape containment entirely. Or that he would spend the next 3 years as something neither human nor monster, holding on to one fragile thread of himself, the need to protect her. Chapter 1. Present day. I don't remember my name, but I remember the taste of blood. The creatures outside shambled past my window, gray skin, milky eyes, movements jerky as broken puppets. The infected, I called them, though I didn't know where I'd learned the word. They'd been human once. Now they wandered the dead city in packs, drawn to sound and movement and the smell of living flesh. They never came for me. I'd tested this early on, walking among them while they parted around me like water around stone. Whatever I was, they recognized me as something other than prey. But I wasn't one of them either. I could think, I could feel, I could want, and what I wanted, more than anything, was blood. Not infected blood. I'd tried that once, desperate and starving, and spent 3 days retching black bile. Human blood. Living blood. The kind that sang through veins and tasted like copper and salt, and something almost like memory. I hadn't tasted it yet. In 3 years of waking, 3 years of scavenging canned food that sat heavy and wrong in my stomach, 3 years of circling this laboratory I called home without knowing why, I hadn't found a single living human. Until today. Chapter 2. I found him beneath a collapsed overpass, half buried in rubble. Both legs ended in ragged stumps below the knee. Blood soaked his torn clothing, already darkening at the edges. His breathing came shallow and wet, the sound of someone whose lungs were filling with fluid. He should have been dead. Any normal human would have been dead. But as I crouched beside him, I watched the exposed bone at his ankle begin to knit itself back together. Muscle fibers threading across the gap like red lace. Skin crawling to cover the wound in real time. He was healing, regenerating, like me. In a way, though, my own cuts closed within seconds, and his would clearly take hours. I leaned closer. His neck was pale beneath the blood, the pulse visible at his throat. The scent of him filled my head warm iron, living copper, something that made my teeth ache. I could taste him right now. He was too weak to fight. He might not even wake. Instead, I lifted him over my shoulder and carried him home. I told myself it was practical. A renewable food source was worth more than a single meal. But something else drove me too, a whisper at the edge of my empty memory that said, "Don't let this one die." Chapter 3. He woke while I was drinking from him. I'd waited as long as I could. Laid him on the laboratory's single bed, cleaned his wounds, watched his legs slowly rebuild themselves over the course of hours. But his scent filled the small space, until I couldn't think, couldn't breathe, couldn't do anything but stare at the pulse jumping in his throat. His blood tasted like nothing I'd imagined, rich and complex, with an undertone of something powerful, the essence of his regenerative ability, maybe, or something older. I drank carefully, trying to pace myself, but it was like trying to sip from a waterfall. His eyes snapped open. I jerked back, but not fast enough. The floor beneath me erupted. Hardened earth wrapped around my torso and pinned me to the wall before I could blink. New Moon fanatic. His voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper, but his eyes burned cold. Should have known. My blood's that valuable to your experiments? I struggled against the earthen bonds. They didn't budge. He was weak. I could see the effort draining him. His newly healed legs trembling, but his control was precise. I don't know what new moon is. The words came out muffled against the dirt. I don't know what anything is. I woke up in this city 3 years ago, and I don't remember anything before that. He stared at me. You expect me to believe that? I expect you to believe I'm hungry, and that you taste better than anything I've ever had, and that I carried you here instead of draining you in the street, because something in me said not to let you die. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, the earth binding me crumbled away. Grayson Vale, he said flatly. And if you're lying, I'll bury you so deep you'll never see sunlight again. Chapter 4. Grayson didn't trust me that much, was clear from the way he tracked my movements, from the small tremors in the floor whenever I came too close. But he was also trapped. His legs had regenerated, but he was too weak to travel, and the city beyond my laboratory doors teemed with infected. This place, he said on the second day, examining the equipment that lined the walls. This isn't random. This is a biotech research facility, military grade. I shrugged. I woke up here. I don't know why. The infected don't attack you. You drink blood to survive. You heal faster than I do, and I'm the only recorded regenerator in 3 sanctuaries. He turned to face me. You're not human, but you're not infected either. Someone made you this way. The words landed like stones in still water. I'd wondered, of course. In 3 years of solitude, I'd had nothing but questions. But hearing it stated so baldly made something cold settle in my chest. What's a regenerator? Rare mutation. 1 in 10 million, roughly. The virus that causes infection? It kills most people, turns some into those things outside. But a handful of us, our bodies adapted. Accelerated healing. Enhanced durability. His mouth twisted. Makes us very valuable to certain organizations. New Moon? A faction that believes regenerator blood is the key to curing the infection. They capture us, drain us, experiment. His voice went flat. I escaped their facility 2 weeks ago. Took an explosive to the legs doing it. I looked at him differently then. The wariness in his eyes wasn't just about me. It was the look of someone who'd been hunted. I won't turn you over to anyone, I said. You don't even know who you are. No. But I know what it feels like to be alone. And I know I don't want to hurt you. He held my gaze for a long moment. Then he nodded. Once not trust. Exactly. But something closer to truce. Chapter 5. On the 4th night, the zombie king came. I'd seen him before, circling the perimeter of my territory. Massive frame, gray skin stretched over corded muscle, fingernails grown into claws. His eyes were the milky white of the infected, but something sharper moved behind them. Something aware. The other infected fled from him. Even I felt the weight of his presence, a pressure in the air, a wrongness that made my teeth ache. But he'd never approached the laboratory, never crossed my threshold. I'd assumed he couldn't, that whatever made me invisible to the infected also created a barrier he couldn't breach. Tonight, I learned how wrong I was. The door exploded inward. Grayson grabbed me and shoved me behind him, earth rising around his fists like gauntlets. But the zombie king moved faster than anything that size should move, crossing the room in 2 strides and lifting Grayson by the throat. I acted on instinct, launched myself at the creature's arm, fangs bared, ready to tear through whatever passed for his flesh. The zombie king caught me with his free hand, lifted me to eye level, and stopped. Those milky eyes focused on my face. I watched something shift behind them. Recognition, I realized. Not the blank hunger of the infected. He knew me. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. The sound that emerged was barely a word, more growl than speech. But I understood it anyway. Ivy, my name. He knew my name. The zombie king released us both. Grayson hit the ground hard, gasping. I landed in a crouch, staring up at the creature who'd spoken the only word I remembered. Before I could respond, he was gone through the shattered door, into the night, moving faster than my eyes could track. Chapter 6. He knew you. Grayson's voice was flat, but I could hear the edge beneath it. The apex infected in this entire region, the one even New Moon's strike teams won't engage, and he knew your name. I sat on the edge of the bed, arms wrapped around my knees. He didn't hurt us. He could have killed us both in seconds. He chose not to. Why? I didn't answer. The echo of that voice still rang in my head. Ivy. Spoken with something that sounded almost like grief. This laboratory, Grayson continued, pacing. A regenerator he called by name. An infected apex that refuses to attack her. This isn't coincidence. Something happened here before the outbreak, and you're at the center of it. I don't remember. Then we need to find out. He stopped in front of me. The equipment here, some of it's still functional. There might be records, research logs, something that explains what you are and why that thing responds to you. I looked up at him. You could leave. You're healed. You could find your way to one of the sanctuaries. And go where? New Moon has operatives in every major settlement. The moment I surface, they'll find me. His jaw tightened. Besides, if there's even a chance that understanding your condition could help develop a real cure, not the blood-harvesting butchery New Moon practices, then it's worth investigating. It wasn't quite kindness, but it wasn't purely self-interest either. Something in his reasoning reminded me of the whisper that had made me carry him home instead of draining him in the street. Okay, I said. Where do we start? Chapter 7. The laboratory's computer systems had been fried years ago, but the paper records survived file cabinets full of handwritten notes, research logs, data printouts. It took us 3 days to sort through them. And by the end, I wished we hadn't. Project Lazarus. Grayson read aloud, voice tight. Modified retrovirus designed to enhance cellular regeneration. Principal researchers, Dr. Marcus Holloway and Dr. Benjamin Reed. I stared at the photograph clipped to the file. A man in a white coat, dark hair graying at the temples, smile lines around his eyes. Something about his face made my chest hurt. There's a personal file, Grayson said carefully. Subject designation: Ivy Holloway, daughter of Marcus Holloway. Exhibited anomalous regenerative markers from birth. Primary candidate for serum testing. The words blurred. My father? The timeline matches. 3 years ago, Reed accelerated human trials against protocol. Holloway tried to report him to the ethics board. Grayson's voice hardened. Reed found out. According to these notes, he injected both Holloways with the virus as retaliation, and it mutated beyond his control. Escaped containment. Caused the outbreak. I couldn't breathe. My father. The man in the photograph was my father, and he'd tried to protect me. And because of that, Ivy. Grayson's hand closed over mine. There's more. Marcus Holloway was infected during the escape attempt. But before he turned completely, he administered the only dose of stabilizing serum to his daughter. To you. The Zombie King. The creature who'd spoken my name with grief in his voice. Who'd never attacked me in 3 years of circling this laboratory. He's still in there, I whispered. Some part of him. He's been protecting me this whole time. Chapter 8. We found Benjamin Reed 3 weeks later. Or, rather, he found us. We'd left the laboratory to search for supplies. Grayson's regeneration kept him from starving, but I needed blood more frequently. Now the records suggested that stress accelerated my metabolism, and the canned food did nothing to satisfy the hunger. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. An abandoned convoy on the highway, vehicles positioned to funnel us into a narrow corridor. By the time Grayson sensed the earth-dampening field they'd laid, we were surrounded. Reed stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by armed guards. He looked older than his file photo, gray at the temples. Deep lines carved around his mouth, but his eyes held the same sharp calculation. Grayson Vale. New Moon's lost property, returned at last. His gaze shifted to me, and something flickered across his face. And Ivy Holloway, I'd wondered if you survived. Grayson moved in front of me, but the guards raised their weapons. Reed waved them down. No need for violence. I'm here to make an offer. He smiled, the expression somehow worse than a threat. Come with me voluntarily, and I'll give you the truth about what happened to your father. Refuse, and... well, there are 20 armed soldiers here, and my dampening field neutralizes Earth manipulation within a 100-meter radius. The odds aren't in your favor. You caused the outbreak, I said. The words tore out of me. You infected my father. You infected me. I advanced the timeline of an inevitable event. Reed's voice stayed pleasant, reasonable. The virus was going to escape eventually. Containment protocols were insufficient, and your father was too cautious to push for necessary upgrades. I simply ensured that when it happened, we'd have test subjects who could actually survive the process. Grayson's hands were shaking. I could feel the effort he was expending against the dampening field, trying to reach the earth beneath our feet. Marcus was always too soft, Reed continued. He had the key to human evolution in his hands, and he wanted to run safety trials for another decade. The world was dying, and he wanted to wait. He spread his hands. I gave humanity a chance. Yes, the cost was high. But the survivors, regenerators, enhanced, infected, whatever Ivy has become, were the foundation of a new species. Stronger, better. You're insane, Grayson said flatly. I'm a visionary. There's a difference. Reed checked his watch. You have 30 seconds to decide. Cooperation or force. Either way, you're coming with me. I looked at Grayson. He looked at me. And in that moment, I made a choice. I ran. Not away, toward. I launched myself at Reed, faster than his guards could track, and my fangs found his throat before anyone could fire. I didn't drink. I just held him there, my teeth pressed against his pulse, feeling his blood surge with sudden terror. Call them off, I said quietly. Or I'll drain you dry before your first soldier can pull a trigger. Chapter 9. Reed's voice shook. Stand down. Everyone, stand down. The guards hesitated. Grayson moved while they were distracted, disabling the dampening device with a precise burst of compressed earth. I felt his power flood back, the ground trembling beneath our feet. Here's what's going to happen, I said against Reed's throat. You're going to give us a vehicle, supplies, and the research notes from your current facility. Everything you have on reversing the infection. The research is incomplete. My fangs pressed harder. A bead of blood welled up, and it took everything I had not to drink. Then you'd better work faster, because if I ever see you again, and you don't have a cure, I'm going to let my father finish what he's been wanting to do for 3 years. Reed went still. You found out about Marcus. I found out everything, and I know he's still in there, somewhere, fighting the infection that you caused. So you're going to fix it. You're going to find a way to reverse what you did, not just to him, but to everyone. And if you try to run, if you try to capture us again, if you do anything except exactly what I've told you. I released him, stepping back. Grayson's earth rose around us like armor, shielding us from the guards' weapons. He'll find you, I finished. And unlike me, he won't stop at a warning. We left Reed there, trembling in the dust, and vanished into the ruins. Chapter 10. The weeks that followed were harder than anything I'd faced in 3 years alone. We traveled constantly, never staying in one place more than a night or two. Reed's forces pursued us, not directly, but through proxies, through traps, through carefully positioned patrols that forced us into increasingly dangerous territory. But we weren't alone. The zombie king my father followed at a distance. I saw him sometimes, a massive shadow at the edge of the infected swarms, watching. He never approached, never spoke again, but his presence kept the worst of the infected away from us. A barrier of fear and instinct that cleared our path. He's hurting them, Grayson observed one evening, as we sheltered in an abandoned school, moving the swarms away from our route, creating safe corridors. He's protecting us. He's protecting you. Grayson's voice was careful. I'm just collateral benefit. I didn't argue. The connection between my father and me was something I didn't fully understand, some combination of blood and memory, and the remnants of love that even the virus couldn't destroy. But Grayson mattered too. In the weeks of running, of fighting, of huddling together in ruined buildings while I drank from his offered wrist, something had grown between us. Not trust, exactly. Something more complicated than that. When this is over, I said, what do you want? He was quiet for a long moment. I want to stop running. I want to find somewhere the infection can't reach, where New Moon can't find me, and just exist. Without being hunted. Without being valuable to anyone. That sounds lonely. Less lonely than being someone's blood supply. He glanced at me. Present company accepted. I felt my cheeks warm. I could be less demanding, if it bothers you. It doesn't bother me. He said it simply, without elaboration, but something in his voice made my heart skip. Chapter 11. Reed came for us himself. In the end, we'd tracked his facility to an abandoned military bunker, converted into a research complex. The cure, if it existed, would be there, along with whatever remained of Project Lazarus. The attack came at dawn. Not soldiers this time, but infected hundreds of them, driven toward us by handlers with sonic equipment that overrode their normal instincts. Even my immunity couldn't protect us from that many. We fought. Grayson raised walls of earth, compressed spears, anything to slow them down. I moved through the swarm, my speed and strength buying us time, but not enough. Never enough. And then my father arrived. The zombie king tore through the infected like paper, not killing them, hurting them, driving them away from us with roars that shook the ground. The handlers fled. The swarm scattered. In the chaos, we made it to the bunker entrance. Reed was waiting inside, alone, surrounded by computer terminals and research equipment. He looked older than he had weeks ago, hollowed out, dark circles under his eyes. "I finished it," he said as we entered. "The cure. Or close enough." Grayson moved to flank him, earth gathering at his fingertips. I stayed at the door, watching. "It won't reverse advanced infection," Reed continued. "Someone like your father, there's too much neural damage, but it can stabilize early-stage victims, prevent new infections, stop the spread. And you're just giving it to us?" Reed laughed, the sound brittle. "I'm dying. The virus, I contracted it during an accident last month. I have weeks, maybe less, before I turn." He gestured at the equipment. "Everything's here. The formula, the synthesis process, the distribution protocols. All I need is someone to actually implement it. Why should we believe you?" "Because I'm terrified," his voice cracked. "Because I spent my whole career convinced that the ends justified the means. And now I'm about to become one of my own test subjects, and I can't face that knowing I could have stopped this, and didn't." I studied him. The fear in his eyes was real. The tremor in his hands, the sweat on his brow, all real. "My father," I said quietly, "is there anything?" Reed's expression flickered. "The serum he gave you. It contained elements that preserved cognitive function even under extreme viral load. If we could replicate it, synthesize enough for a direct neural injection maybe. But I'd need living samples from someone who received the original treatment." "From me. From you?" Grayson stepped forward. "Absolutely not. This could be another trap." "It's not a trap." I met his eyes. "He's telling the truth. I can smell the infection on him. He has days, not weeks." Reed slumped. "She's right. I'm running out of time. If you want the cure, the real cure, for everyone, then we need to work together. Now." Chapter 12. The next 72 hours blurred together. Reed worked with a focus that bordered on mania, synthesizing compound after compound from my blood samples. Grayson stood guard, watching for any sign of betrayal, while I moved between them monitoring Reed's progress, feeding when I had to, trying to ignore the way his scent was changing as the infection took hold. On the third night, Reed called us over. "It's done." He held up 2 vials, one clear, one faintly luminescent. "The general cure and the cognitive stabilizer. The first one stops the infection. The second one, theoretically, could restore higher brain function in apex infected." "Theoretically?" "I've never tested it. There was never a suitable subject." He looked at me. "Your father is the only apex I know of who retained any awareness. If this doesn't work on him, it won't work on anyone." I took the vials carefully. "What about you?" "The general cure won't help me. I'm too far along. The cognitive stabilizer might buy me time, but..." He shook his head. "I'd rather not spend my final days as a thinking monster. There's a more permanent solution in my desk drawer." "Reed, don't." His voice was tired. "I'm not looking for absolution. I did terrible things for what I believed were good reasons, and now I'm paying for them. That's as close to justice as this world gets." I didn't argue. There was nothing left to say. Chapter 13. We found my father at the edge of the city, standing motionless amid a swarm of infected that parted around him like water. Grayson stayed back, Earth shield raised, ready to extract us if this went wrong. I walked toward the zombie king alone, the luminescent vial clutched in my hand. He watched me approach. Those milky eyes tracked my movement, and I saw the flicker of awareness beneath the part of him that had never stopped fighting. Dad. The word felt strange in my mouth, foreign, but also right. I have something that might help. I don't know if it'll work, but... His hand shot out and caught my wrist. I froze, but there was no violence in his grip. He turned my hand over, examining the vial, and something that might have been hope crossed his ravaged face. Slowly, carefully, I uncapped the vial and pressed it to his lips. He drank. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then he staggered, a sound like tearing metal escaping his throat. The infected around us scattered. Grayson shouted my name, started forward. My father's eyes cleared. Not completely, not human, but aware, focused, present in a way they hadn't been since that first night, when he'd spoken my name, Ivy. His voice came out rough, damaged by years of disuse, but unmistakably him, my little girl. I couldn't speak, could barely see through the tears streaming down my face. But when his arms wrapped around me, careful, so careful, still aware of his strength, I held on and didn't let go. Chapter 14. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. The cognitive stabilizer didn't cure my father. He remained physically transformed, unable to exist among normal humans, his mind clearer but still fighting the infection's pull. We found him a territory in the deep wilderness, far from any sanctuary, where he could exist without threat and without threatening others. The general cure, though that worked. Grayson and I spent the next year traveling between sanctuaries, distributing the formula, training local doctors in the synthesis process. The infection rate dropped, then plummeted. Within 18 months, the spread had essentially stopped. I never fully recovered my memories. The damage from the original infection, from the serum, from whatever Reed had done to me, some things couldn't be undone. But I had a name now, a history. A father who could speak to me, even if only through carefully arranged visits to his wilderness home. And I had Grayson. You don't have to stay, I told him one evening, as we watched the sunset from the walls of the sanctuary we'd helped rebuild. New Moon collapsed after the cure spread. You could go anywhere, live normally. Normal sounds boring. He leaned against me, warm and solid, and alive. Besides, someone has to keep you fed. I could find other sources. You could. He turned to face me, and his expression was serious beneath the gentle teasing. But I don't want you to. These past months, running, fighting, building something worthwhile, they're the first time since the outbreak that I've felt like myself. Like, my life has purpose beyond just surviving. That's not a reason to stay with someone. No. But this is. He kissed me, and his blood sang through his veins, and I tasted copper and salt and something that finally felt like home. Epilogue. 1 year later. I visit my father every month, making the journey through the wilderness to his territory. He's better now, more present, more coherent, though the infection will never fully release its grip. Today, I bring news. The first generation of children born after the cure has shown complete immunity. Whatever Reed created in his desperation, it fundamentally changed human biology. The virus can no longer take hold. My father listens, his eyes clearer than they've been in years. When I finish, he reaches out and touches my cheek, a gentle gesture, achingly familiar from memories I've only partially recovered. He would have been proud, he says. Marcus, your father. He would have been proud of the woman you became. I don't correct him, don't point out that he is Marcus, that he's speaking about himself in third person, that the divide between who he was and what he is remains a wound that won't fully heal. Instead, I lean into his touch and say, I know. Because I do know, now. I know what it means to fight for something larger than yourself. I know what it costs to love someone you can't save. I know that some ruins can be rebuilt, and some can only be honored in their falling. The world is healing. Slowly, imperfectly, but healing. And so am I. The end.